Today's story comes from Southampton on the south coast of England, and it looks at a shocking case of murder on board a military submarine. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Adam Lloyd. The Royal Navy nuclear submarine HMS Astute arrived in Southampton on the 6th of April 2011. It had been at sea for 46 days undergoing sea trials after leaving from the nuclear submarine base at Faslane, just north of Helensburgh in the west of Scotland. The submarine already had a bumpy history, as blunders by those on board meant it was stuck for 10 hours in a channel between the Isle of Skye and the Scottish mainland in October 2010. You may recall it. Seafaring folk can be pretty superstitious, and there was already talk that this submarine was cursed. Safely docked in Southampton, the sailors enjoyed their shore leave. Okay, so Southampton in 2011 is pretty tame compared to Plymouth's Union Street or Old Portsmouth in the late 70s. But still, the sailors were almost all desperate to hit the bars, restaurants, and clubs of Southampton. One of these sailors was 22-year-old Ryan Donovan, and he went large in Southampton. But even when docked, the sailors have to work, and this was the case for Ryan too. After all, on the 8th of April, the submarine was being visited by the great and the good and the average of Southampton's local authorities, all getting the photo opportunities and freebies so much enjoyed by our elected politicians across the UK. But for Ryan, on the night of the 7th of April, that was all to worry about the next day, as he enjoyed a boozy night in Southampton. He got back to his hotel at 3:30 a.m. and staggered out of the taxi and into his bed, knowing that he had to be on duty at midday, less than 9 hours later. Just before Ryan went on duty, his boss, Petty Officer Christopher Brown, carried out what is known as a sniff and eyeball check to judge if he was fit for duty after a night drinking. Ryan passed and was issued with the standard S880 rifle. Are you shocked that the Navy used something as subjective as a sniff and eyeball check before arming someone with a live gun, rather than just investing in some proper tests? Yeah, me too. Now, with his weapon in hand, Ryan walked off towards the submarine's control room along a narrow corridor. But Ryan hadn't signed for the weapon, as was procedure, so Christopher Brown called after him to tell him he hadn't signed for it and he needed to do so. Ryan slowly turned around to face Christopher, and as he did, with the rifle at hip level, he quickly fired the weapon 4 times. Christopher dived for cover, and Chief Petty Officer David McCoy, who was standing nearby, ran down the nearby set of stairs. There were 8 other sailors there, and the group hid in a storage cupboard, terrified for their lives. It was nothing short of a miracle that nobody was hit by the bullets. The weapons engineering officer, 36-year-old Lieutenant Commander Ian Molyneux, he heard the commotion and rushed out from the control room where he was greeting the assorted dignitaries, and he immediately could see just what was going on. Without a thought for his own safety, he lowered his head and tried to wrestle Donovan to the floor. But when he was just centimetres from the muzzle of the gun, Donovan pulled the trigger again, striking Ian Molyneux in the side of the head. Ian was dead before he hit the floor. Donovan casually stepped over the body and carried on walking to the control room, where he fired again for the 6th time. On this occasion, the bullet hit the body of 45-year-old Lieutenant Commander Chris Hodge. He would survive, luckily, but was left with serious kidney and liver injuries. The leader of Southampton City Council, Royston Smith, and the chief executive, Alistair Neil, were next in his sights. Both went to seize Donovan, and though he managed to get away a 7th shot, this fortunately missed his target as he was overpowered by the 2 men. And just like that, Donovan's 13-second shooting spree was over, with 1 man dead, another seriously injured, and others who would never forget the dreadful sounds and scenes and smells they had just witnessed. When interviewed straight afterwards, Alistair Neil told how he thought Donovan was a terrorist, as his eyes looked wild but far away. He described him as seeming as if he was in a dream, or doing this in a video game. As Donovan was taken into custody, he put up no resistance, Detectives began taking a more detailed look into just who Ryan Donovan was for clues about his actions on this day. It emerged that he'd been seen pretty drunk in the early hours before the attack, breaking the rules that forbid sailors from drinking for 10 hours before handling a firearm. There had also been concerns raised about Donovan's attitude, but doctors had assessed him and judged him fit to carry on serving. Then, just before going back on board, he told a colleague, "I'm going to kill someone. I'm not kidding. Watch the news." But again, understandably, I guess, this wasn't taken seriously. On the day of the attack, Donovan asked if he could take the first sentry duty. His colleagues and fellow sailors said there was nothing different about him, and if anything, he seemed cheery as he ate fish and chips in the mess and before he left to go on duty. It was noted also that he squirted vinegar into his mouth, which is an old trick used by many of the sailors to try to hide the smell of alcohol ahead of the sniff and eyeball test. In fact, toxicology tests showed that Donovan had a blood alcohol level 76% above the drink drive limit in the UK. 76%. When detectives investigated his background, information reached the British media how Donovan was interested in games such as Grand Theft Auto, particularly the Kill Frenzy feature. Nothing unusual there, of course, for somebody of his age. It's a super popular game. But using the language of video games, he had joked, so his colleagues had thought, about the best way to get the biggest kill count on board a suit, and he spoke about carrying out a massacre in the control room, boasting that this would make him famous. The tabloids also screeched how Donovan had an alter ego, a rap star called Reggie Moondog. Among the lyrics he wrote was, "Tell the quartermaster I caused disaster. SA 80, more palaver." But again, for a man of his age, this was nothing unusual, right? You'd have seen in the media, especially in the UK, how details of people's lives, like the 2 points above, are given way more importance as background to a crime than they should be. Well, I think so anyway. To me, it is a little lazy, and there is always a fame hungry expert, or 30, who can be rolled out to back this up. So, what was really behind the shooting? It transpired that 4 days earlier, Donovan had retired to his bunk when he should have been on duty helping scrub part of the submarine. The Navy is by its very nature a culture of discipline. It has to be. This isn't for everyone, and this disobedience he showed led his planned deployment on a surface ship being cancelled, which really annoyed him. Donovan had joined the Navy at 18 and was seen as someone with potential, but he never felt comfortable as a submariner. The prospect of joining a surface ship had been such a relief, and it was a calamity for him when his own disobedience wrecked that. He said he felt unable to see a way out and intended to kill himself that day. When interviewed after the gun attack, Donovan confessed that the attack had been premeditated because of being blocked from joining the surface ship. His real targets, whom he also admitted attempting to murder, were Petty Officer Christopher Brown and Chief Petty Officer David McCoy. Donovan faced trial accused of murdering 36-year-old Ian Molyneux and attempting to murder 45-year-old Lieutenant Commander Hodge and two other men who escaped unhurt. He pleaded guilty to all the charges. The court heard that in addition to losing his temper days before the shooting, Donovan had been in trouble before. He'd been reprimanded after biting the finger of a doorman outside a club in Rochester, Kent, after an evening of heavy drinking. He was also arrested by Canadian police during a visit to Halifax after he was involved in a nightclub brawl. Jurors were played a harrowing audio recording of the incident, in which 4 gunshots were heard among shouts from members of the crew. Ian Molyneux's widow, Gillian, bowed her head and put her hand to her mouth as the recording was played out in court. Donovan was told that for his actions he would spend at least 25 years in prison. Sentencing Donovan, the judge told him that in murdering Ian Molyneux, he had robbed him of a bright future with his loving family and of a most promising career. Outside the court, Ian Molyneux's wife, Gillian, said, "Nothing can ever replace Ian. my husband and soulmate and the father of our four beautiful children. To Jamie, Aaron, Bethany, and Charlie, your daddy and I love you very much, and our future will always be guided by him. Ian was well liked in the Navy and beyond. Friends from his home near Wigan spoke about how he coached junior rugby teams and the influence he had on those young people coming through. Commander Breckenbridge, who had been in overall control of the submarine, later said, sailing back to Faslane, there was much introspection about the ability to spot something happening. I think we were saying, why did we not see it? I don't think we could put our hands up and find an answer. I don't think anybody could have spotted what he was going to do, but whether he'd been drinking and was unfit for duty, that is a separate matter. In March 2012, Lieutenant Commander Ian Molyneux was awarded the George Medal, which is second only to the George Cross, for his bravery in the incident in which he lost his life. The medal citation said, Lieutenant Commander Molyneux, with complete disregard for his own safety, had deliberately made an effort to tackle the gunman, knowingly putting himself into extreme danger in order to try to safeguard others from personal injury. His actions were incalculably brave and were carried out in the highest possible service traditions of courage and selfless commitment. In lasting memory of Ian, a memorial tree was planted next to the pavilion at Eccleston Cricket Club, the team where he played for the juniors as a boy, a very special place for him. And there, unfortunately, we have it, a shocking story where a seemingly minor act of disobedience on a submarine led Donovan to think that murder was the answer to the temporary setback that he was facing in his career. And instead of killing his intended targets, he instead killed a brave man who put the lives of others before himself. So many lives ruined forever in just 13 seconds of violence. Until next time, cheerio for now.